Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Coach JJ. We are here to talk about the Open 17.5. We are wrapping up the 2017 Open with an awesome combo of thrusters and double unders. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm really excited to do this workout. No, I'm not. This is going to be very painful for everybody. It doesn't matter if you're good at double unders, you're bad at double unders. It doesn't matter if you're fit or you're less fit. It's going to be painful. I think what was the movie A Knight's Tale, where the guy just starts yelling pain, lots of pain. This one's gonna be pretty spicy for a lot of people. So let's actually talk about pacing first, and I have a pretty extensive pacing chart on the article that you'll be able to see that starts at 6.5 minutes and goes up by 30-second increments. So it goes 6.5 minutes, 7 minutes, 7.5, 8. Up into the 10 or 12 minute mark, and then it goes by 1 minute up to 20. So it does work for more like realistic people's aspirations. If you're doing this workout in the 15 to 20 minute range, it's probably because you struggle with double unders. It should be doable. The 40 minute cap is just to make sure that people are not absolutely drawing blood as they do double unders. No guarantees there. You still might draw blood if you suck at double unders. But just to point out to you guys that the 6.5 minutes, we're at about a 39-second round. A 9-minute mark, we're at the 54-second round. Obviously, the 10-minute is about 1 minute per round, and then the math's really easy here. The spreadsheet's a lot more extensive. Has it broken down by round, and it's one of those things that I just wanted to mention on this is that while this workout seems like just go for it, do what you need to do, and you'll probably trip up on double unders and that'll slow you down and pace you out. You're better off having a plan on those first few rounds than just kind of going into this thing thinking I'm just gonna get after it. 10 rounds is a lot more than what most people are used to doing. And even most people will be able to get through 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds pretty good with everything moving without resting very much. And then what happens is then everything the fatigue sets in, So when they're at the 4, 5, 6 minute mark, all of a sudden their body start to really struggle, and then they're going to be missing double under after double under. The frustration's going to set in, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But it's more important that you have a plan as far as pacing to say, look, I'm going to try to shoot for 48, 45 seconds per round, and then you kind of write it out somewhere on a big whiteboard where you can see, or you have a friend or a coach pacing you off that's separate from your judge. And so having that will allow you to be more fresh going into rounds 5, 6, 7, 8, and you should be able to do double unders better because you're not as exhausted. What we've even seen in some of the people that have been doing this so far is that they're really good in the earlier rounds, and then they start tripping up because they went too fast, and then they're fatigued, right? So that's why pacing is so important on this one. But let's talk about psychology of double unders real quick before I talk about the movements. And it's what can happen. The frustration is can be very damaging to your score. And so one of the things that you need to do before you do this workout is practice your double unders. Make sure that you've grooved them out. A lot of people will. I almost feel like there's this instinct that I only have so many double unders in me each day, so I don't want to use them up before the workout. And so they'll do 2 double unders and then be like, all right, I'm ready. It's no, you need to practice them and warm them up and get the technique down. I've seen countless people get better at double unders on the later rounds of workouts because their body gets the rhythm. Well, if you don't set that rhythm before the workout even starts, then you're going to you might get your first couple rounds in, but what happens is then you end up struggling later on because you were being inefficient in the earlier rounds. So when you do trip up, don't get frustrated. Don't get mad at yourself. Just take a breath, especially if you're not exhausted and you didn't trip because you were tired, but you just caught the rope, their timing was off. Take a breath, maybe count down from 3, 2, 1. Another option that I like is to count my breaths, because usually I'm breathing really fast. But I like my athletes to do this too, is 1, 2, 3, and then go again. And don't think about messing up, and just try to think about being efficient. Don't overthink your double unders too much, because when you start trying to fix them, that's when you get into trouble. That's when you end up tripping up more, is because you're trying to make all these corrections. So try not to overthink it. Take a couple breaths, count down, and just go again. But let's talk about the movements here. So we've got thrusters. This is a shoulder workout, right? So we're doing thrusters and double unders. People's shoulders are going to be very fatigued. And the shoulders don't really get a rest in this. So what you want to do is make sure that you use a lot of hip drive to get that bar overhead, and then don't try, if you can, if the weight's not too excessive for you, don't try not to lower it under like a lot of control, excess control, or slowly. Try to just let that bar come down, you know. And that goes into the next one, is down fast. And what I mean by that is that if you're trying to control the bar on the way down, you're using a lot more energy. The people who have the fastest thrusters and the fastest Fran times, for example, they're actually falling with gravity with that bar. So they're actually they're actually telling themselves, I'm going to pull this bar down. Now you have to have a sufficient strength base to be able to do that. But if the bar weight's not an issue for you, just by telling your muscles that you're trying to go down faster than the bar, will prevent your muscles from trying to control it, and you will use less energy. That being said, it's a lot faster. So just keep in mind that if you do a set of 9 with that, you might need a little extra time before your next set of double unders. Even though somebody else might have gone slower, ends up picking up the rope at the same time, the difference is you use less total energy. So keep that in mind. So down fast on those thrusters. Now there's one thing that we see pretty often with people who are going really fast, and that's the sneak under, as I call it, which is basically you don't clean it up. It's not a squat clean, but it's more like a squat curl, where you kind of sneak under the bar to do the thruster. It is a way to save energy, but it should really be more reserved for the really advanced athletes who are trying to go super fast. Again, if you're a stronger athlete, you might be able to get away with it, especially if you're stronger, but your engine isn't quite your strength, or isn't quite your wheelhouse. You might break the thrusters up and do some sneak unders just because it's a little bit less energy. So not that it's an incorrect technique or anything bad, but it should be reserved more for people who can really handle that weight sufficiently. And then over here, break them up. You know, I think a lot of people will want to break up the thrusters because they're tired. Ideally, you can get through most of the rounds, if not all the rounds, unbroken, just because there's that extra penalty of having to pick that bar up and get it in position. That extra clean, and you know, every time you do that, it's adding to the total workload. So if you can just take a little bit extra time to get organized before you pick the bar up and finish 9, that's probably best. That being said, a lot of times people, when they go to the bar and they tell themselves they're going to do an unbroken set, they take a lot more time. And this is something I've tested in the open and in competitions, is having athletes with the intent of doing a big set versus just go get started. And it's totally fine to drop it after 4 or 3 reps. And they will go to the bar and have less rest if they're just trying to get some reps on the board. And then a lot of times they end up feeling pretty good, so then they maybe go a bigger set or finish the set. So keep that in mind, that if you don't go to the bar necessarily with the 100% mindset, I have to do this unbroken, go to the bar with, I'm going to get some reps on the board, and then if I can, I'm going to go unbroken. Right after, I'll decide after 3, 4, 5 reps, okay, like I can finish this, right? And then just grind it out, finish it, and then again, if you need more time before double unders, you can. But I think a lot of people will, if they're trying to do unbroken sets, they'll walk up to the bar, they'll take a few breaths, maybe they get some chalk, they stare at the bar, and there's this long delay because they're nervous about not doing the set unbroken, which ends up being wasted time, right? They're better off actually doing, 5 reps, dropping the bar, taking a few breaths, and then doing 5 reps. So the double unders is setting up the rope. So they made a very deliberate point about not putting the rope on a table or a box or hanging it or wearing it and all this stuff. And I think that's good to create some consistency. But what you want to do is after every set, before you start the workout, lay your jump rope out. The way I would set it up is you could probably just do, if that's your barbell, you could either do your jump rope like this, or like this. But you want to set it up in a U shape on the ground. I kind of like the 90-degree angle thing. So if you're setting it up, what you want to do is set it up at an angle so that you can finish your thrusters, and then you just pick your rope up and you face the open part of the U, so it's already behind you, and then you start, right? So think about that when you're doing it, and then every time you finish, don't just throw your rope down and be like, oh fuck this rope, to do finish your double unders. And then lay it out, right, so that it's ready for the next round. That could be, because if you throw your rope or it gets tangled, again, that could be seconds that can cost you. The first jump into a double under, if you're fairly confident with double unders, try to do, every time you start a set of double unders, go for the double under. If you can't, you have to do a single or two, try to minimize it to one or two singles. I hate seeing people do a bunch of doubles, especially if you trip up. If you trip up 3 or 4 times in this workout, or you do 3 or 4 singles, every time you start a set and you trip up 3 or 4 times, we're talking about, 40, 50, 60 single unders that are being added to the workout. You want to avoid that. So, but if you're not comfortable, you'll have to stick to that old strategy of doing at least, just try to do one double under and then go into or one single and then go into your doubles. Do not rest on a trip up. So this is something I see a lot when people struggle with getting big sets of double unders, is that they'll be doing their double unders and then the rope, for whatever reason, their arms changed or their timing was off and the rope hits their feet. And then they stop and take a break. And they're not actually tired. You shouldn't rest if you don't need the rest, right? Now, obviously, you're following the pacing. You can be like, oh, I tripped up. Let me look at the pacing chart. Oh, I've got time. You can decide to rest then. But in general, if you're trying to get through the set of double unders and you have a trip up, and this isn't true for advanced athletes too, if you trip up just because timing was off, then just start over again. Don't try to sit there and take advantage of that rest. I think that basically adds another transition to this workout that has a ton of transitions. So don't rest if you trip up on the rope. And this is kind of more for the beginner intermediate people. I think a lot of people tend to hold their breath when they do double unders, and where their breathing is out of sync. And so make sure that you're breathing. These are people who tend to get like 5, 10, or 15 double unders and then trip up every single time. A lot of times they're holding their breath or they're not really breathing adequately, and then they get way more gassed or winded because they're holding their breath. So make sure that you're breathing to the rhythm, right? So you have the rhythm there. And then one thing I wrote here too is resting in the double unders. Now this is an interesting concept. Is that if you're ahead of schedule or you're following a strict pace, there's no point in really pushing yourself to finish the double unders unbroken. Especially if you're confident at them, but then your engine isn't there. So if you need to rest, instead of finishing 35 double unders, and I'll mention like the Boz and Rory video, you can see that they finished their double unders, and sometimes they were taking 20 seconds or more before they picked up the thruster bar because they were going to do an unbroken set, which again makes sense. But why finish 35 unbroken when realistically, if you do 20 and then just stop and rest for a second and take a few breaths and then finish the 15, there's not a big penalty for restarting a set, especially if you start the first rep as a double under. And so for some of you, it might be a good strategy to you know what, I'm going to do 20 double unders, rest, maybe get chalk, 15 double unders, pick up and then immediately, no rest now, immediately pick up the bar, do the thrusters, and then go back to the double unders again, right? So instead of trying to rest between the two movements, you can break those double unders up. And again, this is for people who are confident with double unders, but maybe don't have the engine to be able to do those unbroken and have minimal rest. And then what I have drawn here is double unders in a body cast. And this is a joke that I have with a lot of the people I still coach is that if you're in a full body cast, double under should be your go-to cardio movement. As long as your wrists and ankles move, that's all you need in double unders. And so for those of you who struggle with double unders, it's really important that you don't let the arms drift out to the sides. That's going to make the shoulders blow up even more. It's really important that you keep a very straight, upright posture on the torso. You don't want to be doing any really knee flexion or dolphin kick. It should all be ankles and wrists. So you could be in a body cast. I don't know, I may try this someday. That'd be a good video for YouTube. And do double unders, with only your ankles and your wrist. Because a lot of people tend to use too much extra. They jump too high, they pull their feet up, they kick their feet out, and a lot of that's just wasted movement. Realistically, if you're doing these double unders correctly, you're using as little energy as possible to complete the repetition. So just keep that in mind. It might be a coaching cue that you guys, coaches who are watching, might be able to do as you try to clean people's double unders up, at least for the first few rounds. After that, whatever happens. People are usually out of it. They can't make any corrections. But double unders in a body cast. All right, guys, thanks a lot. It's been a great 2017 Open. I'm hoping you enjoyed it and had great successes. And if you didn't, what did you learn? write this stuff down for your future learning, so that you can work on it through this year and be more prepared for next year. Thanks a lot, and thrive on.